So what are some of those issues that are on that line? Capital funding was one of the ones that were mentioned. So what are the issues when it comes to funding? Well, they need $30,000 plus for their software development. And from experience with my clients, 30,000 estimate is probably well short of what it really should be. 50,000 for hardware, they need that. As mentioned, is cash flow. We'll talk about that in more detail shortly. And there are other funding issues we were talking about with the funding through the super fund. Okay. If they're the issues, can we get funding from somewhere else, and what is the issue if we do get funding from somewhere else? Okay, let's have a look at different sources. They're using their self-managed super fund as a form of sourcing capital for their business. Hands up if you think they can do that. No. You're all correct. You can all get an A for this class. The super fund has to be kept separate. It has to be nothing to do with the business virtually, except for it has done one thing right, or not right as such, but one thing it is allowed to do, and that is to buy the business premises of which the business is operating. Good way of funding something like that. However, there are some other tests and rules that apply in this situation. The first one is the sole purpose test. They have breached the sole purpose test, and if you talk to the tax office, this is the main issue with the self-managed super fund that is so important to them that they are really concerned about it and look for it. What is the sole purpose test? The sole purpose says the sole purpose for a self-managed super fund or any superannuation has to be for the retirement of its members, to fund the retirement of its members. And because of that definition, it stops a person using that, or a member of the fund especially, using the funds that are in there for any present benefit. I mentioned that one of the other investments they had in their self-managed super fund was a holiday house down the coast. There's nothing wrong with a self-managed super fund owning a holiday house down the coast. It can invest down a property down the coast. It's not an issue. The issue is when they use that, because the members are getting a current benefit for the money that's in this super fund. It's supposed to be only for retirement. Even if they pay rent at market value, it is still a breach, because there are other provisions that say a member cannot lease a property from the self-managed super fund, except for business real property, and that's why that part works. There's also a breach of financial assistance. The super fund can't lend money to the business to keep it propped up. It can't use any assets that the self-managed super fund has to fund a borrowing. So it can't use that as security for any loan. So there's a lot of rules that they've breached in this case. The other financial issues I mentioned previously, this is one of them, because this is going to have to be undone. And that is going to be a big financial issue in itself. So we don't just have all this issue, working capital issues and other issues like that. We've got this particular issue as well that may need to be undone. Does it happen? Yes, it does. I had a new client recently who walked in the door because the auditor of his self-managed super fund says, "You're in trouble, mate." Previous accountant had set up a structure for borrowing within a borrowing for the self-managed super fund that completely broke all the rules. Therefore, that had to be undone. It was their business premises. They just bought it. They just spent a heap of money on stamp duty on buying their business premises. It was in a situation where suddenly they might have to sell those business premises, and there was no surety that they would be able to stay there, because they hadn't put a lease in place either, had they? We've managed to fix it, because there are some very limited and very structured lending that a super fund can do. So we managed to fix it. It'll still have to go to the tax office as a breach. The tax office could still take action against them, and there's no guarantee, but we're hoping that because by the time we've lodged the tax return the breach is actually fixed, that they'll be lenient on them. You know what the penalty? Who knows what the penalty is if you get a self-managed super fund wrong and they become non-complying? In other words, not 45% of the assets of the fund is the penalty. So they have a big issue, didn't they? Okay, so the super fund's out. Okay, another common one we see is family and friends. Could Angela and David go and say mum and dad or rich uncle or something rather than say, can you lend us some money please, or a friend? I've seen this work and it does work, but as I've got up there, not a good idea. It can cause a lot of problems in relationships between those family members, those friends. But if you do it, and I have seen it work, so if you do it, document it now. I was talking to some people the other day outside of work, and they were talking about coming to see me about investing in an investment property, but they'd have to bring their mother along because the mother had lent them the money to buy the house they were currently in, they were living in. When they came to the meeting, I said, well, how much do you actually owe to your mother? And the other said one figure and they said another figure. And they're going, but there was no documentation. And what had happened was that person, the son, had actually salary sacrificed through his work a motor vehicle for his mother. And in his mind it said, well, that's part repayment of the loan. In her mind, no, he's saving tax. It's got nothing to do with the loan. And because it wasn't documented, because no one actually thought about it, then it was causing problems. So if you document it, do it. I had a friend who lent money to a relative. They needed it to finish off a house. We put in place a loan agreement. We signed, they got them to sign a mortgage over the property, and that's why I'm saying provide security. We couldn't register that against the title because the bank wouldn't allow a second mortgage, but we issued a caveat against the title. When those people sell that property, there will be a repayment of that loan because it's all been documented, all been set up properly. So it can work. Not a good idea, but if you're going to do it, document it, and if it's a large amount, get security for it as well. Capital Angels, of course, it's a new business, new idea, this event, mate, so it may be something the Capital Angels might assist in. You'd have to talk to them. The bank, possibility. However, they appear to be in this situation fairly highly geared. They're using the super fund as security for loans. I think they've got an issue. We have lots of people walking off the street and saying, I've just been to see a business I'm going to buy. I'm going to the bank later on to get a loan, and they told me I need a cash flow, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, what security are you going to use for the loan? Oh, the business. No. The banks do not, in most cases, lend money secured by the business itself. So don't expect that. They want something much more solid like real estate if they're going to lend it to you. There are some examples where they might lend you a small amount against stock. Accounting firms, they sometimes lend against goodwill, something like that. But generally they won't allow you to buy a business or fund anything else within the business based on just the business as a security. And the tax office. We see a lot of people who use the tax office as their bank. They don't pay their taxes, they get behind 3 and 4 BASs, they haven't paid their GST, haven't paid the PAYG they withheld from their employees' wages, and use that money to do other things to finance the bank, the business. It's not something you should do. The penalties for not lodging are quite severe nowadays, and their interest rate is quite dramatic. It's about 13.5% compounded daily. So they're not a good bank. So I wouldn't recommend that. These people have got problems, and the funding may come from having to sell assets. Unfortunately, selling assets in the super fund is not going to help because the money is still in the super fund and it's still going to be used. So we've got a funding problem.